So this is a project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little background on our tracks project and a little bit of the results. But really, the reason I'm here is to recruit more participants in our new project called the White Heat Project, which is being funded by the Norwegian Research Council. Okay, there. So, most people that look at or a lot of the social science that's looked at snow science and avalanches has looked at accidents. We think that's a little bit too late. What we'd like to do is we would like to look at the start of your tour rather than the unhappy ending of your tour. And so what we're interested in is to try to figure out who and why and how are you making decisions before something like this happens. And hopefully, this is going to trickle into some of the avalanche education. There we go. So, like you said, a lot of what we deal with is a terrain problem. We put an awful lot of attention on snowpack, but really you can do an awful lot by managing your terrain. And so what we do is we use GPS tracking and frame this discussion as largely a topographic or geography discussion. That when we come up against obstacles, either during our tour we're planning or while we're on tour, we come to a change in slope, we come to a tree line, we come to something that causes us to make a decision. And so the way we think about moving through avalanche terrain is largely driven by geography. And so it's very convenient that Jordi is a geographer. So here's what we do.
Good morning, this is Doug Chabot with the Gallatin National Forest Avalanche Advisory issued on Wednesday, February 4th at 7:30 a.m. Snowfall yesterday and last night favored the Big Sky area with a foot of powder. Winter is back. The snowfall only ended hours ago and has not had a chance to stabilize. I anticipate the new snow will be easily triggered on steep terrain.
I'm Jordi Hendricks. I'm the director of the Snow and Avalanche Lab at Montana State University. And what we're doing today is getting out into the field. We're digging a snow pit, we're having a look at the crystal layers, and we're trying to understand what the instability problems are today so that we can better understand and forecast the problems in the snowpack. We've got this really nice, soft, beautiful powder that fell last night. Great skiing conditions at the moment. And then we've got this crust that you can see here. And this crust is a result of some recent warm weather, and potentially is going to be a real problem for us if this slabs up and it could become a sliding layer for us. So we've come up to the slope, we've dug a snow pit, we've checked the forecast, and we've even found that weak layer that we were concerned about. And yet as a group, we still decide to ski that slope. And this is really the key of what our project's looking at. Trying to understand the decision-making processes as a group that sometimes outweighs all of the other information that's presented in front of us.
Anytime you're dealing with geography and humans, critical decisions have to be made. And that's what makes this project for me really, really interesting. So what we're doing with this Ski Tracks project is we have an app called Ski Tracks. And we ask skiers to go out in the morning, punch up the app, and run a GPS track for us. Then when they get home, they send us that track, and I ping them back with an electronic survey. And in this way, what we can do is we can collect some background demographics, experience on some of these skiers, and then I can ask them about their decisions for the day. In that way, we can build a composite picture of how people move through this complex terrain.
So far we've done okay. We've got a bunch of alpine countries all over the world. We have tracks done in Norway in the middle of winter that they are literally going 20 kilometers in the dark and sending us tracks. We have 2,000 plus GPS tracks, little over 400 people. How many people in here have signed up for ski tracks? Cool. We want more of you. And 1 million GPS points to analyze. That's Yordi's problem, right? So no surprises here. Male, young, no children, consider themselves expert skiers, pretty high level of avalanche education, which is a good thing, right? Just for review, you always remember your facets, right? The heuristic traps that McCammon identified several years ago and have kind of become the dominant way to think about these human factors in avalanche travel. And we're not going to go over those, and there's not going to be a test. Right? We have a lot of solo people in this group. 24% of our sample is solo skiers. Right? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We don't know. Most groups, 2 people, 3 people. Exactly what you would expect. Relatively short durations of skiing. We don't see any red flags in terms of utilizing super steep terrain. So far, everything's looking pretty good. Right? Here's a result of looking at some of our ways of testing some of the heuristic traps. The more experienced you are, the steeper terrain you're on. No surprises there, totally expected, and nothing wrong with that. Right? The more experience you have, that's highly correlated with avalanche education. You're probably fully equipped to be on that steep terrain. Again, no surprises. Oop. Did that skip? So some statistical differences in terms of some of these steep terrain, length of trip, duration of the trip. But again, the story is that people are out there getting after it, probably have the training to get after it. Right? We get really hung up on this idea that, oh, you know, we shouldn't be out in this riskier terrain. Well, if we have the tools and we have the training and the conditions are right for it, why not? That's in part why we're out there, we think. Right? So we've looked at some of these heuristic traps. We're not looking at accident data. We're looking at non-accident data. That's really important to keep in mind. I like to think, you know, McCammon and other people who've looked at accidents have looked at failure. We're looking for success. And by and large, here's the spoiler, most people are doing exactly what they probably should be doing out there. That's good news, right? The cool part is we can start to document that now with the tracks and with the surveys. This thing's skipping a little bit. There. Well, okay. Technical. This is our new project. This is called the White Heat Project, and we're working with a team out of Norway. We have just found out that we're working now with a team in Russia. We've got the United States team. We've got European connections. This project is going to go global. What we're trying to do is get beyond this simple description of who's out there and what are they doing, looking at the terrain. What we'd really like to figure out, and this is more complex than you think it is we'd like to know who you are, what your personality is, and what your motivations are. And that's what the White Heat Project is all about. So like I said, we've got a pretty good international team. So what we're gonna try to do, what we tested last year in Norway as we ran this survey up there, we identified groups of skiers, ski cultures, if you will. So the group of people here today probably behave differently in the hills than, say, the Salt Lake crowd. They probably behave differently than the Stanley Basin crowd. And I think because of probably social media has a lot to do with it, connectivity, your motivations in a large, well-connected urban center might actually be a little different than a more rural setting where, for example, in Bozeman, we don't have connectivity in the mountains. Bridger Bowl doesn't have connectivity, right? Big Sky does, but once you get out into the backcountry, we can't Instagram and Facebook our runs. But we know that there are people out there that do. Does that influence your behaviors on the snow? We don't know. So here's an example of the kind of thing we're doing. This is called discrete choice analysis. What we're going to do is we set up several scenarios. We give you some information on those scenarios, and we ask you about your skiing of those scenarios. So how many people would ski the ridge, knowing what you know on the screen? How many people would ski the chute? Right? I don't see a lot of hands going up for either one. Why not? Right? Everybody wants to ski the chute, right? Why? That's what we want to know. Why are you willing to put yourself at a higher level of risk skiing one run versus the other? What's the information you're utilizing? What's the social pressure? What's the interaction with other people, like your peer group, both online and in person? So here's what we're going to do, and here's where you come in. We are making the big push by going to a lot of these SAWs, trying to enroll people. The White Heat project is, I need some real work from you. We have about a 20-minute survey that you do at the start of the year. You can tell us a lot about yourself. It's anonymous. Right? Then you're going to call up with this track, the Ski Tracks track. You're going to send GPSs, and I'm going to send you back another short survey for the daily ski. All right? From that, we hope we can collect another few thousand skiers from around the world and start to really drill in on these motivations and causes for behavior. That's the big missing point, the cause of behavior. You know, 20-something bros, they think different than old people like me. Or do they? Right? And again, this all goes back to the terrain, the types of terrain and how you're skiing it, right? So there's a couple ways to do this. You can contact us, and we'll be contacting you hopefully through email in the near future. You can go to thewhiteheatproject.com, right? You can go to ski tracks at Montana State University, or now we have just recently put together and partnered with Mountain Hub. How many of you are involved in Mountain Hub, signed up for Mountain Hub? Oh, quite a few of you. So this year you'll be able to submit your tracks through Mountain Hub and do the surveys through Mountain Hub with us. So we think that between all three ways of being involved with this, we can really get a lot of people. We really need novices. We have almost no novice skiers. Maybe it's because novice skiers don't look at the forecast. Maybe it's because they don't come to functions like this. But if you have friends that are getting in the sport, we really need to know more about novice skiers. We know a lot about experts, right? They're not the problem. Right? Well. So we've got a few sponsors. MSU has been very gracious to us, Black Diamond, et cetera, up on the screen. But most of all, we really need you. And we're really trying to develop some excitement for this project this year because we think we're on this edge of, like I said, moving on beyond description and moving towards really drilling into behaviors. There's a couple emails on the White Heat and for the tracks. Are there any questions? Cool. Nice.
No questions for Jerry? We've got a couple microphones that are moving around.
Just speak loudly. Just on the query that you have on the survey, do you have a field for like other reasons that we see stuff that we think are driving our reactions that we can submit to, or is it already?
Oh yeah. Because this is pretty exploratory this year, we have a lot of room for comments. He's wanting to know how much beyond the survey, how much comment area for basically investigating things that we're not asking about. And I'm sure we're missing some. But yeah, so the design of the survey, we've put a lot of time and effort into this thing. We think it's pretty friendly. It works on a smartphone pretty well. But if you want to send comments in general just to the websites too, by all means send us stuff.
Yeah, do we have any other questions? And I have to ask you to come up to the microphone, or we can run a mic over to you. So we've got Forrest up here in the front, over on the side.
I have a very fast question. I just want to know, can you use the Ski Tracks Lite, the free one, or do you have to use the subscription-based one?
The buy-in to this project is pretty high. The app is 99 cents.
Oh my gosh.
We hope that's not a barrier. And I should say that we fully recognize that there's a self-selected group in our sampling. Not everyone is into it. The only reason I bought a smartphone is because I got involved with this research project. So there are people who are not interested in this kind of thing. We know we're missing those people. There is virtually no way around it. So we're very upfront and very honest that we have a biased sample. And I don't need to get into the technicalities of sampling, but because we don't have a population, we can't draw a sample. So this is what's called a convenience sample. And we hope it's convenient, and we're trying to make it as convenient as possible for you to be a participant. So we're really hoping that we have a good representation from Seattle.
Great.
And the larger Seattle area.
We have a question up here for us.
Speaking of sampling bias, do you see people submitting their tracks and answering surveys when they have accidents as well? Like, is there any way that you can keep track of that and measure?
That's a really good question. The incidence of accidents is very, very low in this sport. If you look at the popular media, you wouldn't think so. But in fact, it's very low and going down. We have a couple near misses in the data where people actually wrote us a narrative, but we have not seen a major accident involved with this. I think that says a lot about either the people that are signed up to send us tracks, or it says a lot about the state of education in avalanche education. Our group, 40% have a level 1. And if you look at the terrain use by education, people have no education, are utilizing fairly steep slopes. If they take an awareness class, that drops down several degrees. Level 1 steps up a bit and then steps up again. And so that says an awful lot about the efficacy of avalanche education, which was something I think, frankly, was kind of missed in the heuristic traps discussion. I think we're finding just the opposite. Take it level 1.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerry.